Excellent. Excellent.
How was your Saturday, babe?
It has been good. I was just telling everybody we had errands that we were running. And I got a cat that is insistent on wanting to get on the lap. She's going to sit right behind me. So everybody can see the world and universe can see Zoe getting on her perch. Yep, she's getting on her perch and doing her thing. So yeah, just we had some errands to run today, stuff going on. So
I still have to go feed the chickens, by the way.
Yeah, I thought we did. That'll be an errand that we're gonna have to do right after this, and so definitely got things to do today. It sure seems like, and I know folks are out doing football and watching the game, and multiple games that we got going on right now. So I'm trying to adjust camera just a little bit.
Trying to get on Facebook here.
Yeah. So, what all have you been up to? I know you were doing some computer work today.
I was getting stuff together for taxes and going through things like that. So that's why my mind's my mind is boggled at the moment.
Yeah, it's kind of that way.
No. Yeah. Typical.
Yeah, it's a Saturday. That's exactly right. And I think most people that are tuning in or stopping by have seen us getting on regularly, talking a little bit about our health and our health journey. And that's been kind of a change, I guess, for probably most people. I mean, that followed me through the years. I mean, I've been a pastor and a realtor, and now full time. So it's kind of a change to see. And now I'm talking about health, and people are kind of like, what is that? And if you follow, then you probably have some idea about what it is that I've been talking about this whole time. Because if you know me, health journey has been a big part of my life, and different issues along the way that have happened, and it's kind of brought some things to light for you and I both.
Yeah. For me, that started last year at this time. Actually, a lot of people know my story, but for those that don't. Basically, I usually go to the doctor, get my annual checkup at the beginning of the year. I like to get it over with. And I went last January and wasn't feeling very well, but I was just very, I was like, man, I hope this isn't, too bad, but I'm going to go anyway. And, found out that I was a diabetic. My blood pressure that I'd been taking medication for a number of years, that longer than I wanted to. Basically, it was out of control and could not be controlled by the medication that I was taking. I had uncontrolled hypertension, high cholesterol, and my thyroid medication wasn't working because everything else wasn't working.
Right.
Obviously, it was all out of whack. And so prior to last year, and I always go prior because that didn't happen last year. I mean, it led up to what the diagnosis was, but 10, 15 years earlier, I had been diagnosed with high blood pressure, and that's when I was put on that medication. And I didn't even want to do that. I was kicking and screaming and trying to, fight my way through. No, I'm going to get off of this. I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to, I'm going to reverse all this. I'm going to do my best. And, at the same time, within a 5-year period, I would say I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And I had a complete thyroidectomy, and that's why I had to go on medication for that. And other things transpired to where, I had other health issues. I had other problems that occurred. I had dermoid cysts. I had fibroids. It was one thing after another. And as I look back now, I see where it started. It even started before that. My second pregnancy, I had gestational diabetes. And so I remember my doctor and some of the nurses saying, well, this could be something to come. This might be the sign of things to come. And, when you're I was in my late 20s with my my second pregnancy. And you know, when you're in your 20s, you're invulnerable. You know, you think you can
Oh yeah.
conquer the world, and you're invincible. And
Yeah.
and that's how I felt. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen to me.
Right.
No, that's not going to happen to me. I know it's not. I'm healthy. So fast forward, and now we're here. And this year has been eye-opening to me. I have learned a lot about health, more than I was ever taught in school. In
Yeah,
fact,
you're a doctor. I mean, that's your calling right there.
I went to dental school. I've been a dentist for 30 years. I never heard the terms of metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance in the way that how I've educated myself in this last year. It's been truly eye-opening. And when I think about everything, you know, when you have something happen to you, for me anyway, it's self-reflection. You start thinking about everything that's gone on, everything that's transpired, and it sometimes it's not pretty. Most of the time it's not pretty when we, you know, look inside ourselves and see what goes on and see the whole picture, and at least try to figure out what's going on. And that's what happened to me. And so last year, when I was diagnosed with all those things, and I was given, basically I was told, well, your medication that you're on now is not working, but still take it.
Right.
Here's 4 more with another option of possibility of this if the other stuff doesn't work. And I'm like, no, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. That's not where I wanted to be. Because the other thing that I noticed, and I was watching this and couldn't figure this out in the last 5 to 10 years of my dental practice, I saw so many patients that would come in on one medication, like I had one medication for 10 years.
Right.
And all of a sudden, within a span of a short time, they went from 1 to 3 to 5 to 12. And I didn't want to be that.
Yeah.
So that's where the self-reflection came in. And I started looking at that pattern, but also seeing the pattern where my patients in my practice were not only having more medication, but they were getting sicker.
Right.
And they weren't getting better. It wasn't making things better. They were developing more ailments as they went along. And not only that, the diagnoses were coming in with a younger generation. There was younger people coming in with diabetes, younger people being diagnosed with non-alcohol fatty liver syndrome.
When you say younger, what age group are we talking about there?
We're talking, I've seen diabetes type 2 in teenagers.
Wow.
I've seen as early as 20-something-year-olds losing their teeth because of periodontal disease.
Like their whole mouth? Like mouth. All their teeth?
Yes.
Get out of here.
No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, true. And so I knew something was going, I mean, obviously something's going on. What's going on? This, where there was disease before, I'm not saying there wasn't, you know, we didn't see all that. It was just a different dynamic. There were a new generation, a younger generation, where things were starting, you know, we were starting to see disease where it wasn't before. People who lost their teeth, they were older people, right? People who got dentures were older people.
Sure.
We're not, when people think of a person with dentures, I remember my grandmother, and not a 35-year-old person.
Right.
And
sure.
and it's unfortunate. So something's going on, and I noticed that, but I couldn't figure it out. And I've been doing dentistry, you know, like I said, I've been doing dentistry for 30 years.
Right.
So that, you know, it's interesting, because that's what I started thinking about when they were giving me all these medications, and that's where my mind went. That's the rabbit hole it went down. So I didn't want to go on medication, and I tried to do everything possible, and I said, I'm going to figure this out. And researched, got in touch with some friends of mine and researched some more, started reading, and I found that, you know, diet's a big thing. And I'm not talking about
Yeah, I was
the
about to
Weight
say,
Watchers
when you say
system.
diet, kind of unpack that a little bit more for us?
Sure. I'm not talking about Weight Watchers. I'm not talking about Nutrisystem. I'm talking about what we eat.
Like
What we eat
day in, day
day
out, what we're,
in and day out.
yeah, just,
Our gut health in
right.
this country is shot.
Yeah.
And when you heal your gut and you're able to heal your gut, you're able to move forward. You're able to heal
Hmm.
yourself, and your body knows what to do.
Right. Right.
So that is kind of where I was a year ago, and I'm in this place right now to where I am probably, I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I can do things that I was never able to do. And
Right.
if I was doing them in the past, I was doing them because I was defiant against, I'm not going to let this stop me.
Right.
But it
Right.
was painful. It was hard. It was harder than it should have
Hmm.
been. We'd go on hikes, right,
Yeah.
babe? We'd go on hikes.
Yep.
And I don't know if some might remember, it was a year ago, February, March. No, it was actually January-ish. I can't remember, but I do know we went to Fairbanks to visit my older son, and he's like, "Hey, mom, let's go on a hike." And now Fairbanks in January, you got to paint the picture here. It is snow covered, and it could be minus 20 or below or further. And so he's like, "Do you want to go on a hike to a glacier?" And I had never done that, and I thought, what a great adventure, because that's what I love to do. I'm always
Right.
up for the next adventure. And I, I said, "Sure, let's go." One of the hardest things I'd ever done at the time, because if you remember, a year ago, January, I was just getting ready to go to my appointment and find out all the things that was wrong with me. And
Right.
I did it. I did the hike. It was difficult. It was eye-opening. Again, I was like, why is this so difficult for me? My husband and I would hike, Ken, you and I would hike. We did hikes in Hawaii. We did hikes in Georgia. We did hikes in
Hmm.
Tennessee, wherever we went.
We
That's
did a
what
hike. Yeah.
we're outdoorsy people. We do hikes in Alaska all the time.
Right.
And it was so, I was struggling. And now I even have, I mentioned to Ken, and I'm like, man, would you like to do, some more hiking, some more, let's do the Appalachian Trail, or just, do something, go hiking somewhere, backpacking. We backpacked actually in Ketchikan a couple of years ago, I think,
Yeah. Just a
and
little bit.
just a
Yeah.
little bit, so we're always on the go. We're always going somewhere. We're always doing something. And it just got harder and harder. And
Right.
now I'm able to, now that I'm healthy again, I don't even think twice about it. Um, Ken, Ken has there's a funny story that I'll share. We were going to a performance at our Performing Arts Center last May or something like that. And I don't take the stairs. I am not a stairs person.
No.
If I can avoid going up the stairs, I will, at all costs. If I have to stand in line at a elevator for 10, 15 minutes, I will avoid taking the stairs. I will wait in line. So we had entered the auditorium and found, our seats were up 2 levels. And I did, again, I had, by May of last year, I just, I had changed my whole diet. I had changed the way I, looked at life. I had changed what I was doing. And by May, my inflammation had gone down. I was able to do things that, like I said, I'd not been able to do before, and did not think for 1 second about getting to our seats in the auditorium. And I don't know if you remember this, babe, but I just grabbed, the I guess the what do you call the
The
usher,
armrest.
whatever, gave
The
back,
armrail.
gave back
Yeah.
the seat, the tickets, and said, you go this way. And I basically ran up the stairs. And I remember Ken following me, and we get in our seats, and he's like, what was that? I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, I have known you a long time now, and I have never, ever known you to take the stairs. And I'm like, well, I mean, I didn't want to, and I said, I didn't want to wait in line for the elevator. And he's like, wow, that's never happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So little things like
Right.
that. And unbeknownst, so another part of this is when I was diagnosed with diabetes in January, February-ish of, it was January, toward the end of last year. I did not tell Ken. I did not tell my husband. There were several reasons. One, I was trying to process it because I didn't know what I was going to do about it. The other was I knew that he's a widow. I was a widow. I am a widow. He is a widower. And I wasn't sure how this was all going to be taken.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to me, I'll let Ken continue with his story.
Yeah. So it was right before that in December, I had my doctor's appointment, and the doctor dropped the bomb on me that I had diabetes. And I was already dealing with hypertension, and I'm a cancer survivor, testicular cancer, back in 2000. And I was dealing with acid reflux, and the doctor said that, you know what, you're going to have to make some changes. But we're going to put you on more meds come 6 months from now. And I was like, okay, what do I do? Well, the last time a doctor had done that to me and said that had been when my first wife, Heather, was dying of cancer, and I needed to do some things. And so she gave me a diet to do. And I started that. I was working out and I was exercising. I have a stationary bike, but I started finding online. I found some coaches and started doing some more workout. And so I was strict on the diet. I was working out. I lost the weight, but I lived this unbelievable life. I mean, I like religiously worked out twice a day to help lose the weight, calories in, calories out. The problem with it is that I couldn't sustain what was happening. There just was no sustaining that. After I got to the weight, what do I do? Well, then it just took a few years, and then I put it all back on. And so then that's really what happens. And, some of the pictures that Lauren had taken of me even before that, I weighed in at 195, but you can look at those pictures, and I can tell you that in August, September, I was over 200. I wasn't even checking the scale then. Not a big fan of scales. Now I don't worry so much about it. But, for me, a lot of this plays into, my history. And like Lauren, being a doctor, I have a master's degree, and so research is something that's always important to me that, I jumped into and said, okay, I need to do some research, but I didn't tell Lauren I was doing this. And so I started digging into it, and, really more than anything was just what I had done before, and it really wasn't working. And so I was watching Lauren was making some changes, and so I talked to her about it, and from what she told me, I went on my own path to research more about what changes she had made and how I could continue that. And I started doing the same things and started to see the results, and not just that I was seeing results in losing weight. It was I got off of my blood pressure medication. I lowered my blood pressure. I came in and I found myself, my acid reflux was healing, so my leaky gut. When it came to my anxiety and depression, which I struggled with since I had cancer, I found myself able to wean myself off of that medication. And what's happened is really kind of like Lauren said, though, I started tracing back my journey. And those that know some of this, look back, and will take a lot of time, but back before my wife died, back in 2014, I was diagnosed with ischemic optic neuropathy that cost me vision in both my right eye and my left eye. Come to find out, one of the things that was happening is that ischemic optic neuropathy, none of the doctors that I was talking to gave me the insight to understand that it was termed the stroke in the eyes. So my optic nerve stroked out and cost me that vision. And the stroke is related to heart disease. So it's having to do, and it's like, well, why didn't anybody say that? And, through that period of time, I was dealing also with this hypertension. I was already on blood pressure medication.
I was going to say also, we have since found out that it's also linked with hypertension,
Right.
and that no one, you had shared that you had high blood pressure way long before you were diagnosed with the ischemic optic neuropathy, and no
Right.
one equated the two.
Right.
No one.
But it's in the papers. I said, I did the research. I got into the National Institute of Health. I got into PubMed. I have found the paper. It's all there. The documentation is there for us to read. And it's just a matter of doing it. And, just a Google search in and of itself doesn't find that. It's not in there. So you've got to dig into it. And that's not something I particularly was like, ooh, let me do this. That's really what I want to do, is learn a whole nother field of study. But that's really what it led to. And as I continued to piece it back, I mentioned too, I guess, from my cancer, it was right after my cancers that I started to have migraines, and the anxiety came in. Well, you start to think about that. I would get up and I would get concerned every day that I would have a migraine. Well, that leads to anxiety. You're worried. Am I going to have pain? Am I not going to have pain? I started doing all kinds of stuff. I started taking Botox. I was taking over-the-counter medication. I ate Excedrin like it was candy, and none of that was good. And then what do I wind up having to do? I start on Nexium. Before I started on Pepcid, then it was Nexium, then it was on prescription strength Nexium, which had its own set of side effects. But here's the other thing. And this, Lauren was talking about, gestational diabetes when she was pregnant. I began to piece back that back in, those are friends of mine from grade school, which some have popped on here periodically. Back in third grade, I started having joint pains. I was diagnosed with childhood arthritis. That's an early sign of this whole issue of our metabolic health, of this inflammation. And people say, well, my grandmother had arthritis, so it's genetic.
Maybe.
I'm sorry, maybe. But that's my history, is I can go back to these early signs back in the 70s, back when we're learning and understanding that our entire food system shifted and changed, became part of heavy production, and fiber was taken out of our diet. Now, I don't want to, get too far into it. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But, it's looking back, that was a significant change in the world when it came to food. And that's part of where, we can talk about, and are going to talk a little bit about metabolic syndrome. And Lauren, you talked a little bit about your practice, and I guess maybe this is a good time to start kind of talking about this whole issue of metabolic syndrome, because that's, in your practice, that's one of the things you pieced together with me that you were struggling with, that you were seeing those cases in people's mouths. And I watched the Sugar movie, and saw the whole section where the kids in Appalachia who drinking the Mountain Dew. And, the same thing in the sense of young people having to have their entire mouths, their teeth taken out and have dentures put in because of sugar. But we're talking about Alaska. We're talking where this is not the common, you would think, scenario. And these are sometimes affluent kids. They're not rural. They're not in the lower income brackets. But no. It doesn't seem to be
all over.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, does it?
I said before that metabolic syndrome does not discriminate. Insulin resistance does not discriminate. You could be of any shape, size, age, gender, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
93% of us are metabolically unhealthy. Let's talk about what that means. Metabolic syndrome is a group of conditions, starting with high blood pressure, high blood sugars, high triglycerides, low HDL, the good cholesterol, the low stuff, and then that pregnancy belly, and that is when your belly is big and round, and it's the circumference is larger
Right.
than half. So it's those symptoms. And if you have 3 or more, you are more than likely metabolically compromised. You have metabolic syndrome.
I was reading that Harvard actually just gives us the number for men in particular. I'm not sure with women, but I was reading it because we've got the men's health thing that we're going to do on Tuesday.
Yeah.
That is just waist size 40. Men, if you're a waist size 40, that is one of those signs. And I was like, well, guess what? I read all this. I had 4 of the 5.
Yeah.
I mean,
I probably had 5 of the 5. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah.
Yeah.
So what does this do? What does this tell us? Basically, if you have 3 or more of these symptoms or of these conditions, you are more than likely to develop heart disease, diabetes, stroke, cancer, and there's others. You are more than likely insulin resistant. You are susceptible to systemic disease. There is 38 million people in the United States alone that has diabetes.
Right.
There are, I think it's another, 30 million? Is it 30 million? No, over 30 million.
Yeah.
That have cardiovascular disease.
Mm-hmm.
And of the 93% of Americans that are metabolically unhealthy, most of them don't even know it.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
You go to your doctor and you are given the diagnosis that you're pre-diabetic. It's like being a little pregnant.
Right.
That does not exist. You either are or you're not. So you're diabetic.
Right.
Now, how it's treated, some depending on your doctor, which kills me because it angers me.
Mm-hmm.
Some decide, oh, you're fine. Let's just wait. Your numbers are not high enough.
Right.
Or here, we're going to treat it with this. The last thing you want to do is to a type 2 diabetic is give them insulin. That's the last thing you want to do. So what happens is you start out by getting, the pill. And then over time, that pill doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you give it another one. And then you go a little ways and that doesn't work. Then they give you insulin. And then when that doesn't work, you get more insulin. And then it goes from there. And now we're on this merry-go-round of just more medication. And it's not helping you any.
Right.
You're getting sicker. And that's what I saw as patients were coming in the dental chair. Also, I was seeing they would come in with that, plus they'd have a statin.
Yeah.
And then they'd come in with more meds because they'd have a stomach issue. So they were given a stomach medication to settle that down. Then they couldn't sleep. So then they were given a medication to go to bed, to get to sleep at night, to stay asleep at night. Then they couldn't wake up. So they were given medication to get through the day.
Right.
They had pain because of God knows what. And so this went on and on and on, but nobody was getting better. They were getting worse.
Right. Well, you
not going to be that.
Right. Well, and you mentioned about, getting upset. And for me as a pastor for 30 years, working with kids, working as a youth pastor, working with children, working in low-income areas, supporting the ministry of the church, being a United Methodist pastor, one of the things for us is always working with those that are income disadvantaged, those that are struggling. And one of the things that we have been seeing has been this increase in obesity and fatty liver. We talk about the non-fatty liver with adults, but it's with children, and that almost 50% of our children are now overweight and obese. And those that are on here, and whether you're watching the recording or watching now, I'd love to hear, who do you think is the biggest fast food restaurant in the world? Who do you think is the biggest fast food restaurant? I can probably guess what you're thinking, but I'll give you a minute to type it in there. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. There's a lot of them out there.
Let's see what the comments bring.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
I don't know.
Great fast food restaurant in the world.
I'm sure what I've seen, in other comments. Yep, Linda, McDonald's. Yep.
McDonald's.
That would be probably everybody's number one, but you might think of another one.
And moving on to that, it's diet. I mean, let's touch on that.
It is.
It's the way we're eating. It's what we're eating. It's how we're eating. The fiber of our food today, there's none. I'll just say that. It's stripped completely. To answer,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well,
I'm not really watching the comments.
Yeah, Linda's is the one right now. I'm sure others are thinking about it. So, but it's almost we all go McDonald's. Let's just say it right there. But the fact of the matter is, it's not. It's this public school system. Because what is the public school system doing? It's doing the old food pyramid. It's doing my plate. It's giving our kids loads of sugar, fruit. KFC would be great. Yeah, that could be up there. It's not, unfortunately, like I said. But yeah, it's the public school system. And if you look at what our children are eating and being fed, they are being fed oatmeal that's been processed loaded with sugar. The fruits that have been put in there are not the fruits that have any fiber. The fiber's been stripped from it. They're giving them orange juice. They're giving them apple juice. They're giving them so many things that have been processed, and most of it has already been prepared even before it got to the school. So it's already been pre-processed, highly processed in so many things that are causing our kids to have that non-fatty liver disease, and we're feeding right into that within our school system.
And what else? Teachers are complaining they're all hyperactive. Well, let's see. We've got a whole breakfast of sugar. What does that do? Attention deficit right there. Right to the That's where it is. All the sugar's going there.
Yeah.
Carbohydrates are being metabolized with sugar.
Yeah.
Sugar's being distributed throughout your body. You can't process them. You're insulin resistant. Sugar in the brain in kids is ADHD. So what are we doing? What are we doing as a society? Most of the things, Ken and I were fortunate. We were able to take a trip last year. We went over to Europe, and we went to a grocery store. I just happened to take a look at food labels. Now, we were in a different country that, I had to use my Google Translate. But let me tell you, the food labels did not have the laundry list of items that we have. Let's just take ketchup, for example.
Right. You know what I remember about that? It wasn't even the label. It was like I needed to taste it. The ketchup tasted like tomatoes.
Yes.
I can't taste tomatoes in our ketchup.
No, there's too many ingredients that knock all that out. So what's banned in our country what's banned in Europe is not banned in our country. Why is that? And it's simple. It's easy. Easiness and money. They're going to get away with what they're going to get away with. And it's unfortunate because our bodies are reacting to that.
Right.
Our gut health is at risk. So you all know both Ken and I, and if you don't, both Ken and I are widows. Yep. We lost our spouses. I lost mine in 2005. I don't remember the exact year.
For me, it was 2016.
Okay. So we both had to raise our children without our spouses around. Not something neither one of us planned it for. Not something that I planned for. And when I look back, my husband, who was also a dentist, his name was Keith. Those of you who are watching may know and remember him. And if you do, just, give me a shout out there. I remember like yesterday when he passed away.
Yeah.
It was very sudden. Ken and I both have different journeys to how we became a widow. Mine was very sudden.
But you don't forget it. It doesn't matter.
No.
Yeah, and I'll talk about it. But yeah.
The ultimate end, it's the same.
Right.
How you get there doesn't matter. Yes, Linda. Yes. Linda, my cousin. She shares with me many, many, many stories of their time in Montana. And I love speaking with her because I get to live the life that I did not know of my husband before you know, before he met me. She shares those stories with me, as do many of you, And so when he passed away, he was 38 years old. And if I knew then, it's that old saying, if I knew then what I knew now, I would be so grateful, because I could see this now when I look back on everything that was transpiring at the time, which I didn't understand and didn't know because we just didn't know. Now I get it. Keith was never, I knew this man for 20 years. We dated for 10 and we were married for 10. He was never sick one day in his life, which is a great thing. However, when you're not sick, you don't go to the doctor. You're fine, right? So what makes you think you need health care? What makes you think you need medical care? He was never sick. And when I say never sick, not even so much as a cold. So when he developed some type of upper respiratory infection, it was just, you know, a cold that we thought.
Yeah.
Nothing more. And he literally got sick on a Friday and died on a Monday. And when I look back and I'm like, well, what suppressed his immune system? Why did this happen? It's just a cold, right? It's just a cold. So what was going on? And he had probably 4 out of the 5 of those conditions that we talked about earlier that is leading to metabolic syndrome, and that you are metabolically unhealthy.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, that's metabolic syndrome that leads to cardiac problems, health,
right.
You know, health, heart problems, and diabetes and stroke. And the reason I know this, and now that I'm aware of this, is because about 2 weeks before he passed away, he had a pre-op appointment, because a week later, after he had passed away, that's when he was scheduled to have knee surgery. And it just so happened he had some labs done. He had a pre-op done. And some of the values were right at, you know, the high end, just almost. But I look at it now and I see what I didn't see before. He was insulin resistant. He had been diagnosed with sleep apnea 3 months before, and things were happening that I didn't realize and didn't notice until now when I thought about them. That's what was happening. And so the researcher that I am, I looked up myocarditis, because that's what ultimately was the cause of his dying. And I looked up insulin resistance. It's a risk factor. So again, it's a lot of things. What we don't know what we don't know. This is one of my favorite pictures, and a lot of people have heard me say this. And I'm going to hold this up because I call it the insulin resistant squid. And you can, you know, take a look here. Y'all can take a, you know, picture of it, whatever. This is the cause of all these things. But that's not just, there's more. Myocarditis is not on there. So there's more. And it's, again, it's what we don't know what we don't know. And nothing was harder for me. I've had lots of things in my life that have been obstacles and challenges and hurdles. When you have to sit down with 2 little boys, the ages of 6 and 9, and tell them their father died, that is one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
And it will be the hardest thing. And there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
So that is, and if I, like, it's again, if I knew then what I knew now, it would have helped.
Yeah.
It would have made sense. I would have been able to put all these pieces together.
You would have changed how you guys lived. I mean, you would have changed, you know, what we're doing now, you would have done then.
100%. Our diet, we could have, it wasn't bad necessarily, but it could have been better.
Right.
Uh, it, I look back and yeah, oh, I'd have changed so many things, kind of like I did with us within that year.
Right.
I immediately, if you look at our pantry now and you look at our pantry from a year ago, I wish I had taken pictures. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but, and so Ken has a similar story in the sense
Right.
of his loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
A different, very different journey though.
Right. Yeah. So my kids were in their teenage years, and when Heather was having problems with her gut, having issues passing anything, so we went to the doctor, and they tried to do a colonoscopy. Um, and when they showed us the pictures, we got to see him. The tumor was so large they could not complete the the colonoscopy. So we knew that, I mean, there was just no question. Her diagnosis was stage 4D colon cancer, which is incredibly advanced. So, we did everything we could to jump on that. One of the things we discovered early on as we looked at her history was that she had a gene, a DNA marker that prevented many of her body receiving many of the modern, newer treatments for colon cancer that have been proven to be incredibly effective for so many other people. And so that limited, so it had to be a very traditional route that we went with in order to treat her. And so it of course completely disrupted our lives as a family. I mean, in every situation we could, so many people jumped in to help as she was going through the treatment of surgery, then radiation, and then the chemotherapy. And when things weren't working over and over again, we got to really the last bit. There would have been some brand new medication, and her oncologist and I went fighting with the insurance company. I'll never forget the day that I showed up because they had denied her coverage, and I showed up at the doctor's office with a backpack full of snacks and food, and I said, I'm not leaving here until I get an answer to this. And they didn't have one, and they said, come in here, we're going to help you. And we got on the phone. The doctor had a full slate, and I sat there for hours with the insurance company that day until we got somebody. I said, every time somebody told me no, I said, then give me somebody that has the power to say yes, and let's get this taken care of. And the doctor cleared his schedule when we finally found that person, and he and I went to bat, and he was livid. I've never seen a doctor so upset trying to care for his patient, and we got our approval. Sadly, it was too far that it could do anything. And so, like Lauren was saying, Heather passed away on June 12th of 2016, surrounded by me and her kids, our kids. And it's a day I'll never forget. There's just no way you can't block that out. There is just nothing. And then to try to restructure your life. For those of y'all that know me, I wrote a book about the fact that this was my reality, that as a pastor and somebody caring, trying to understand, I wrote a book called Life Sucks, because that's what it did. And people so many times take that the wrong way, because what sucked was the fact that all of our dreams and to try to help people understand what it is to be a widow when you have children. And even at any point, this is your partner. This is the person you had made plans with. This is the person that your whole life was structured. Your brain, actually, there's a condition called widow's brain, because you begin to trust the other person to think for you. And I can tell you, and Lauren, I think we'll back this up, as married together now, it's taken us the 7 years that we've been together. We're still working on that. I mean, not and realize we don't always. Sometimes it's like, oh, we are thinking like each other. We can think, and okay, I'm getting that. But then other times it's, what were you thinking? Well, I wasn't thinking like I was supposed to, because that didn't work out. But it was all of those dreams that had been sucked out. And looking back, we can sit there and see. And we know more and more. A friend of mine who's a doctor was posting. Dr. Kenny was was noting that this very thing, that there's been a lot of talk about how certain cancers, certain things in our lives are genetic. And, you know, one of those, again, like for me was arthritis. Colon cancer is one that's often been said to be genetic. But here's the problem with that. Recent studies have also shown, in particular, in the country of Japan, where colon cancer is almost completely unheard of. People in Japan come to the United States and they adopt a standard American diet. And what happens is they get standard American diseases, and then they go to standard American doctors for our standard American treatments. And so we have Japanese with colon cancer in the United States that didn't have it before. And the reality of it is the food that we're eating, how we're eating, what's not in our foods that we're eating is what fed those cells in Heather's gut. While she had the polyps there that are part of the journey of colon cancer, those polyps fed off of the fact that the food did not have the nutrients it needed that would have protected that. Would the colon cancer have come? Probably at some point in time. We would have been facing that fight. But when it did, how it progressed, happened in such an aggressive way. Yes, going to the doctor earlier could have done some things. But how the standard American diet did the damage it did, there's just no way about it. And so, like Lauren, and I always wonder, you know, when is there a good time to lose a spouse when you have kids? And I don't know an answer to that question, but I know she had it when her boys were younger. For me, my kids were just getting ready to launch into adulthood when they lost their mom. And I cannot even begin to tell you, because if you haven't lived that, because the tragedy and the stress of all of the hormones and everything that a teenager's going through is so tremendous, it's still, for me and my adult kids, the effects of that are so very real. So I take this very personal in the sense of how it hurt my relationships with my children. As much as we try to heal that and we try to work on it, metabolic syndrome and this issue hurts families.
Yes.
The reality of what we wanted to say today, which is something that really, Lauren, neither of us have talked about this publicly. We talk about it privately. So when Lauren said she was ready to talk about this, I was like, okay, this kills. And I don't think I can say it any more firmly. Metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance kills. That's what it does.
And it's one of those things that creeps up on you. Like I said, I was having issues. All things were starting, you know, crazy stuff was happening to me 15, 20 years ago. And you just think it's a sign of, well, this is aging. This is a sign of getting older. I might as well just, my family has it. I might as well just chalk it up to that. Genetics, hereditary, DNA markers, whatever.
Right.
That may sound all nice and pretty and good. But the fact of the matter remains, it's, for me, I caused it.
Yeah. It's what we did. It's what we did.
It's my diet. But, in a way, it's no fault of my own. I was doing what I was taught.
Right.
I was eating what was provided. And it has come to my attention in the last year that, and it's been quite eye-opening, what is provided is misleading.
Yep.
And what is allowed to happen is sickening. And that's what it's doing to us.
Right.
So having to sift, if you will, through things and realize what's good for you, what is not good for you.
Right.
It's challenging. I mean, people ask us, they ask me, she worked out and she changed her diet. And my answer is to both, no. I didn't. I added fiber to my diet. And I
intentionally.
yes, intentionally. You and I added fasting.
Mhm.
I did not fast before. I did it and it was not pretty. And now I know how to do it in a healthy
Mhm.
way.
And
You
I think
go ahead, sorry. Go ahead,
well, no,
babe.
I was going to say, because there's really three parts to this. So there's the fiber, the fasting, and there's the order in which we eat the food that we eat. And ultimately, it's a lifestyle. It's not, and as we say, when I hear somebody say diet, wrong answer. It is not in the sense that this is to lose weight. No, this is to be healthy. We are talking about what we did was turn on a healthy lifestyle and turned and allowed our body to heal itself.
So Linda, I was just commenting. That's why I was looking at. I was commenting. Linda says metabolic syndrome is a cluster of health conditions.
Yep.
And basically the high blood pressure, the high blood sugar, excessive belly fat, abnormal cholesterol. She gets it. That's it.
Yeah.
That is it. The thing that Ken was saying about this is not a diet, it's a lifestyle, and I'll tell you why. I don't have diabetes anymore.
Yep.
I don't have hypertension. I don't have uncontrolled hypertension. I don't have high blood pressure anymore. I don't have to take medication for that. What I do have to take medication for is my thyroid, because I don't have a thyroid. That's not going to change, but I will tell you what changed. I don't have to take as much of it anymore because my body is metabolically flexible. I am able to process things, and my bodily functions do everything they're supposed to do the way it's supposed to happen. I'm not inflamed anymore. All the side effects from all of that, fibromyalgia, brain fog, inflammation,
Yep.
headaches, muscle aches, joint
Yeah.
pain, all of it is gone.
Well, and here's even the better part about it. It's one of the things we talked about. And if you look on Lauren's page or you look on my page, because this is the season of Mardi Gras. And if there's one thing that I look forward to, and I'm not from New Orleans, the king cake is like, oh my gosh, I understand this. We're not going to miss this. And because we're metabolically healthy, people are like going, what? You're not supposed to be eating sugar. That's part of your. No, we don't. We regularly do not. We understand we don't regularly consume that. But here's the thing: because we adopted this lifestyle, because what we saw, and we don't want our friends to go through what we went through, and that's why we're speaking out. We don't want you. I mean, as we say often, nobody gets out of here alive. And if you are married, at some point, in all likelihood, somebody's going to be a widow or a widower in that relationship. That should be after a very long life, and that's what we want. We want you to live. But ultimately, we eat king cake. It's a time to celebrate. This is a season of celebration. We eat king cake. We took king cake to my office. My RMG crew got to have king, most of it for the first time. I got thank yous. Lauren got thank yous. Did I eat some? Oh, yeah. I've eaten plenty of king cake already this year. But you know what? My body knows what to do with all of that sugar.
Yep.
My body is not fighting with me on that, because here's the thing. Our body only needs one teaspoon or one teaspoonful? Was it teaspoon or tablespoon? One teaspoon.
Yeah.
And the amazing part about it is, and we missed this. I must have slept through this in biology or human anatomy. Our body makes that one teaspoon. You
It makes
don't need
for us
you.
what we need.
Yeah, we don't need to eat any extra sugar. And I'm going to let y'all process this, because we're not going to stop talking about what we're talking about. But process that for a minute when you hear somebody say, I have low blood sugar, and they need to eat more. Their body is not the body is not broken.
We have a comment. Albert says, I think most of all doctors are only following what Big Pharma says. Yeah. They're following a protocol regimen that they were taught.
Yep.
Let's treat the symptom. We're not going to treat the root cause.
Yep.
I'm a dentist. Okay. I had to learn this. My patients were coming in and they weren't getting better.
Yeah.
And then some patients patients that were developing things that I couldn't explain. And I had to figure this out. We weren't taught this. I am not saying I am anti-drug at all. There's a time and a place for antibiotics, believe me.
Yeah.
But the dosing that goes on in this country is ridiculous. It is uncalled for, it is unnecessary, and it's all about the bottom line, the almighty dollar. And no one is getting better. I always, had this conversation. Actually, Ken and I have had this conversation. I've had this conversation with someone. If you're taking your medication and it's working, why do you need a refill? It's not working.
And they don't give you a prescription, they give you a subscription, because you have to keep, once they get you on it, you're taking it forever, unless you make the lifestyle change. And that's what we're talking about. And sweetheart, I'm looking at the clock.
Oh, yeah,
apparently she knew she was looking at the clock too.
Yes.
Saying,
oh my goodness, it's been an
yeah,
hour. Wow.
It has been.
Okay.
It has been.
Well,
so
for joining with us. And it was, I love talking to my husband. We should have these little chats every now and then, more frequently actually than we do. And we could share our life with you. So I think I'm going to, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and go make dinner.
All right.
Then we can
all right.
Cards.
Absolutely. So thank y'all for tuning in tonight. We wish you all the best, and know we're here.
Night, guys.
Good night.